Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. Let's get started now with today's video and with the first book recommendation. The first book I wanted to recommend is called Anatomy of a Scandal by Sarah Vaughan. So this book takes place in different times and we kind of follow three different characters. On one hand, we have Sophie and James. They are married, they have two kids. James is a high-profile political figure. He's friends with the Prime Minister of the UK. Sophie is his wife, who he met when he was going to university. And then we have Kate, who is a barrister, as they call them in the UK, or a prosecutor, as you would call them in the US, who always follows cases of sexual misconduct, of sexual abuse, prosecuting the people, of course, accused of these crimes. So as you might guess from the main characters and what their jobs are, Kate is presented with a new case that she has to prosecute, which involves James, who is accused of sexual misconduct by a female colleague he has. So this whole book is about the trial, but not only that, but about the stories of the three of them, how they came to be, how they got their jobs, their roles, where did they go to university, what happened there in university, and how their lives interconnect. So I like this book, but I found it a bit predictable maybe at the middle or end, and because of that I wouldn't rate it 5 stars, but I think the idea of the book is good. I think the plot is great. Characters, I think, are well developed. So overall, I would recommend it if you like reading about trials or crimes. Go ahead, read this one, and I think you're gonna like it. And it's becoming a TV show soon. So if you like book adaptations, this is a great choice. The next book I wanted to recommend is called Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So you already know I read another book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is called The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and you already know I love that book. It was probably my favorite book of 2020. So I had been postponing reading Daisy Jones and the Six for months, but after reading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I said I have to give this book a try. It's another book by the same author, so I'm probably gonna like it. And I was not wrong. I really like this book. First of all, it's very original. It tells a story of this music band called Daisy Jones and the Six, which is of course a young woman named Daisy Jones and 6 other band members, which have concerts together, go on tours together, and you already know they have broken up by the time the book begins. And this book is told in a very special and unique way, which is by different interviews. So each of the members of the band is giving their own version of the facts, of the things that happened from the very beginning of the career of Daisy Jones, as well as the beginning of the career of the Six, and then how they got together as a group, how they went on tour, and everything that happened and why they split up in the end. So although you already know what's going on and what's gonna happen in a way, I think the way the story is told, where everyone says what they remember or what they thought happened or how they thought things went down, and how the stories differ depending on who's telling the story, I think that's a very original idea. I don't think I have read any other books that are told in this way. And if you like music and you like 70s music and rock bands, I think you're gonna love the story of this book even more. Overall, I would of course recommend it. I really liked it. And this one is also becoming a TV show soon. They have already cast all the characters. I think they have made some great choices. So yeah, go ahead. I think you should go and read this book. Read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo as well if you haven't read that one, and go and watch the TV show next. The third book I wanted to recommend is called The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. So I heard about this book from several people I follow on Instagram. Everyone was talking about this book at one point, and everyone had such great reviews that I said I need to read this one. So I went for it. So this book is about Alicia. Alicia's a famous artist that one day when her husband comes back from work, she shoots her husband 5 times, kills him, and then never ever speaks another word about it. So after that, when she goes on trial, they think she is not capable, so she ends up in a mental institution instead of going to jail. And this book is about her, of course, and the relationship with a therapist that works at this mental institution that is obsessed with her case and with helping her, with helping Alicia find her voice, tell her story, tell what really happened that day when her husband was shot, whether it was her, was not her, or what went down. The book is very, very good in my opinion. I think it's very well told. The story is very compelling, very intriguing. The fact that this person that apparently killed someone is not speaking, it's not saying what went down, is very, very good. And it makes you want to read, want to understand what happened. And the finale is chef's kiss, as you would say. For me, I did not see it coming at all. The final 2 or 3 chapters were a real shock in the best way. So I really like this book. I don't know if this one's becoming a movie or TV show soon, but you should totally read the book. Anyway, it's very, very good. The 4th book I wanted to recommend is called Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman. Well, let's begin by saying that the premise of this book is very good. I didn't like it that much. Let me explain myself. So this book is about a young couple that gets married. They go on their honeymoon to Bora Bora, and when they go scuba diving, they find something in the water. And this is something that's going to change their lives forever. So the idea of the book is great. You already know that this is the plot since the very beginning, but the thing is that the book does not begin with them on their honeymoon. The book begins with the main character telling you that she is digging a grave. This is chapter 1. She is digging a grave to bury her dead husband. So, you know the husband said, you know they're gonna find something on their honeymoon, but that doesn't happen until like the middle of the book. So I was like going through the first chapters like, when are you going on your honeymoon? When are you going to find something in the water? I already know your husband is gonna end up dead because that's the very first chapter. So I feel like it starts great because, you know, she is burying her dead husband. So, you know, something went really, really wrong. But the whole point of the book, the thing they find in the water, you don't find out what that is until like the middle of the book, and then everything goes, I wouldn't say pretty bad since that moment. I don't think the author does a great job at explaining what the character is feeling, thinking. Everything becomes a mess, and at one point it really feels like, and I'm not alone with this one, I know a lot of people on Goodreads think the same, it's like she puts like a whole description about a gun, like feels like she copied and pasted that from Wikipedia. And I'm like, what am I reading, you know? So I don't know, I had very high hopes, I think, for the book, and it starts great, doesn't end that well for me. Very predictable, not very well written, if I can say that. I'm not an expert, but I read a lot of books. So I know a lot of people really liked it. I think it was one of Reese Witherspoon's picks for her book club, which are very, very popular. But in my opinion, it's not that great of a book. But I must say this, I know people talk a lot about the audiobook, and I did listen a few of the chapters of this book in audiobook, and I must admit that it's good. The author of this book is an actress, so I think that the fact that she is reading the parts in the audiobook gives it like a different feeling, and it's pretty great, but the book does not do it for me. I'm sorry. And the 5th and last book I wanted to talk about today, it's called The Lying Game by Ruth Ware. So this is a story about a group of 4 friends. They went to a boarding school of all girls together when they were kids, and then something happened that made them drift apart. They lived in different parts of the UK now, different cities, they have their own lives, but one day they receive a message from one of the friends of the women saying that she needs them. So they all go back to the town where the boarding school was, where they grew up, and they have to confront themselves with their own past, with what happened, what made them leave the town, what made them split up, what made them stop talking to each other. I really like this book. Let's begin with that. I think it does a great job at not revealing everything from the very beginning. It gives you like little pieces of information as you read every chapter. Not only that, but since it's told from a personal perspective from one of the friends, you're not entirely sure if the information she is giving you is reliable. So it has that bit of intrigue. You're not really sure what's going on or what really happened. happened in the past until I'd say almost the very end. I really like this book. I think it has a great story, great idea about going like back in time and telling the stories when they were kids and now when they're grown-ups and mothers. So I would recommend it. I'd say go ahead, read this one. I think you're gonna like it. And I know the author has some other books that a lot of people like as well. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and try to find another Ruth Ware book. And if you have read any of those, do let me know down below in the comments. So yes, that is everything for today's video. Of course, as always, do let me know down below in the comments if you have read any of these 5 books. Do let me know what you're reading right now, what you would recommend that I read, because I'm always looking for new book recommendations. And if you like books, of course, I'm sure you know already about Goodreads, the community for book lovers. I'm on Goodreads as well as Flo Pereira. You can find me there as well. And you know, as I always say, I will see you on the next one. Bye! Let's get started with today's 5 new book recommendations. The first book I have to recommend is called The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse. In this book, there was a sanatorium back in the day in a remote part of the Swiss Alps. But this place closed many years ago, and then it was bought by someone else and it was transformed into a hotel. This hotel, and as you can guess, is very exclusive, very remote location, a very unique design. So when the main character of this book, called Ellen, is invited to spend a couple of days there by her brother and his fiance, she has really no reason to say no. But once she is there, she starts feeling like this place is kind of weird, has kind of a weird energy to it, maybe related to its past. And at the same time, people within the hotel start disappearing. So Ellen must somehow resolve the mystery, find out what's going on with the missing people before something even bigger happens at the hotel. So I like this book. Let's start by saying that for me, it was a very good book, well written and everything. It was a bit scary. I don't really like horror movies or scary movies in general. So this book for me was very scary and gave me some serious chills. And I'm very happy that I read it during the day and not at night, because maybe I would have had nightmares. But if you are more into the mystery thrillers, but with a touch of horror, scary, I think you're really going to like this one. I think the story is well constructed, and when you get to the end of the story and you find out what was really going on and what happened, why things are happening nowadays and everything, I think the whole story really has a good ending and it's very logical and a good explanation. So overall, I really like this book. Now, moving on to book number 2, we are going to be talking about The Last House Guest by Megan Miranda. So this story takes place in a town called Littleport in Maine. In this town, there are 2 types of people. People that live there throughout the whole year, and then people that only go into town during the holidays. So for many years, there has been a great friendship between Sadie, which is one of the visitors, and Avery, which is one of the local residents. So they spend all summer together, they share their secrets, they have parties together. So when one summer Sadie is found dead, Avery's whole world starts to crumble. And although the police rules the death as suicide, Avery is not that sure. So she is set on a quest to find out what really happened with her best friend. So this book is told in 2 different timelines. On one side you have present day, and then you have what happened about a year ago when Sadie died. There is a bit of mystery about trying to find out what really happened with this girl, but I think that if you usually read mystery or thriller novels, you kind of find out what's going on before actually reaching that point in the book, and that happened for me. But I still think this is a good book to grab if you're in the search for something that might keep you up late at night until you find out what's really going on in this town. So overall, good book for me, and it's my second recommendation in this video. The third book I wanted to recommend is called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And before getting started with what this book is about, I have to say that this one is my my favorite read of 2021, which is not a small thing. So keep that in mind because I really like this one. I recommend it to literally everyone that they should read this book because it's really that good, and yeah, just know that. So the idea of this book is that there is a library somewhere, the Midnight Library of the title of this book, where you sort of go between life and death. So when you are sort of dying, before actually being dead, you end up in this library. And this library has a person there that helps you go through the books, and each of these books has a different alternative version of what your life could have been. So for the main character of this book called Nora, one book might represent what would have happened if she pursued the dream of having a rock band with her brother. Another one would be what would have happened if she went on to become an Olympic swimmer. Another one about being a person that studies glaciers. So in each of these books, Nora finds the opportunity to see what would have happened with her life if she had gone into a different career, into a different relationship, into different decisions at any given point in her life. So this book is truly so emotional. I think that at one point of this book you realize what the ending is going to be, and you realize what's going to happen with Nora in the end. But what I liked about it is that that's not the main point of the story, but it's more about regrets, more about the decisions we make along the way, and if we would change the lives we had, if we could, and what these other decisions that we made at some point in our lives would have taken us. For me, it was a very emotional read. I cried like, I'm not gonna say half of this book, but probably like the last third of this book was me bawling my eyes out because it was not sad, but I don't know, like got me thinking about so many things, because you're reading about Nora's story, but in a way you're thinking about your life as well, and maybe the life of the people you know, and about this whole thing that every person probably in this world has thought about at least one time in their lives. That is this, what if, and then what if something different had happened? What if I had taken a different path? And it was crazy. For me, it was really good book. So I would recommend that you read it as well. I have a small disclosure to make before ending this recommendation. That is, this book covers topics of suicide. So maybe that's a good thing to know before diving into the book, if that might trigger something for you and your life and your personal experiences. But apart from that, I think that this is a really good book. So that ends the book review for this one, my favorite book of 2021, and let's move on to the next. The fourth book I have to recommend is called The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. So this book is mainly about two women. On one side we have Amber, and on the other side we have Daphne. So Daphne's life is everything that Amber would love to have. She has a very handsome husband who's very caring. She has two lovely daughters, an amazing gigantic house, and seemingly a lot of money. While on the other hand, Amber has a job she doesn't really like, she has no family apparently, and she lives in a very tiny apartment. So Amber has a plan to sort of gain access to this amazing life that Daphne has. So she becomes best friend with Daphne and tries to figure out a way to somehow replace her. So to begin with, I think the initial plot of this story is very good, and it's what caught my attention and what made me want to read this book. So we'll give it props for that. As you begin to read, there are certain things that you sort of realize before the author makes the final reveal. And I think the story has like two different twists. The first twist I realized way ahead of it coming out on the story. But then the second twist, which is very dark, that one I did not see coming at all. So for that, I give props to the author. So for me, this book was a very good read, and overall, I recommend that you read it. And finally, the fifth and last book I have to recommend for today's video is called Still Lives by Maria Hummel. This book is mainly about two different women. One of them is Maggie, who is the person that's telling the story, and on the other hand we have Kim Lord. Kim Lord is an artist and she has been working for several months on a new exhibition of her called Still Lives, as the book is called, which is all about famous women that were murdered and how their lives and how the stories of their murders were kind of scrutinized by the media and became sort of like a weird part of pop culture. So when Kim Lord doesn't show up on the day of the opening of her exhibition at the museum in LA, Maggie, who works at the museum, gets really worried and starts investigating on her own what could have happened with Kim Lord, why she didn't show up, and if there is something going on with her ex-boyfriend, who now happens to be Kim Lord's boyfriend. So I think this book is good. Didn't love it, but I liked it. I think the story is good and the mystery is good. But when you get to the final reveal, the final whodunit or who did it, as you might say, I think that's underwhelming. I don't think the author has like a great closure of the story that makes like 100% sense. But it was not a bad book. It really caught my attention and I was really intrigued until the very last page, trying to find out what really happened with Kim Lord and what's going on in this story. So overall, I think it's a good one. Not my favorite, but I recommend you read it. And as usual, of course, do let me know down below in the comments if you have read any of the books I have recommended, what you're reading right now. That is it for today's video. As always, I will see you on the next one. Bye! We are going to be talking about book recommendations, especially about 5 books that I've read, and I'm going to share my thoughts with you. Now, what's really special about this video is that these 5 books that I'm going to be talking about are books that I actually did not like that much. So I usually talk about books I really love, books that were my favorites, but in this case, I am going to be talking about 5 books that I gave each of them 3-star reviews on Goodreads, 3 out of 5, so meaning I didn't quite like them that much, but I still read them until the very end, so I am going to be talking about them anyways. Now, with that being said, let's get started with my first book review. The first book I wanted to talk about is called Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. So you have probably heard about Gillian Flynn. She is the author of Gone Girl, which is a book that I read and liked and that was turned into a movie, and she is also the author of Sharp Objects, which is another one of her books that was turned into a TV show. So I think she really creates masterpieces and amazing books with shocking endings and things you cannot anticipate. So I was really excited about reading Dark Places. It's a book that she wrote a while ago, and I think he also has a movie adaptation, but I haven't watched that. But I went on reading this book like really excited about what was going to happen. So this book is about Libby Day. Libby Day was only 7 years old when her 2 sisters and her mother were killed in some sort of Satan sacrifice. She was the only one who survived, and she testified that her brother killed the 3 of them. Now, 25 years later, there's a group that studies and is really obsessed about famous crimes, so they get in touch with her in order to know more about what happened that day, what she remembers, what's up with her brother, who's now in jail. So although Libby never really wanted to talk about this with anyone, she sees this as an opportunity to earn some money, because they're going to pay her for every time she appears at one of these group club discussions, or every time she gives them any kind of evidence or information about this crime. But as Libby gets deeper and deeper into the investigation and into the evidence from back in the day and everything, she starts to wonder what really happened that day and whether or not her brother actually committed the crimes. So when I read what this book was about, I was really excited and I thought it was a great idea and a great story. However, I didn't like it that much. I think the ending is kind of out of the blue and doesn't make much sense, and I really did not like the main character. I could not be like empathetic with the main character, which is Libby. The relationship with her brother is also pretty weird. So overall, it was not my favorite book, I have to be honest here, but I am always sharing all about all the books I read because maybe it doesn't doesn't sit well with me, but maybe it's going to be one of your favorites. So that is it for book review number 1 in today's video. Now, moving on to book number 2, we are going to be talking about Truly Madly Guilty by Liane Moriarty. So Liane Moriarty is an author you have probably heard about as well. She is the author of Big Little Lies, which is a book that was turned into a great and amazing TV show on HBO. And she is also the author of the book What Alice Forgot that I recommended, I think, in my first video, which I absolutely love. And she's also the author of The Husband's Secrets, which is another book that I recommended in one of my other videos. So this was my 3rd time reading a book by this author, and I was really excited going into that because I have really liked everything that I've read by this author before. But this one was a disappointment. So at the beginning of this book, you really don't know what's going on. You have 2 women that used to be best friends, Clementine and Erica, and something happened and they don't talk to each other anymore. And at the same time, you see that the relationships they have with their partners or their children are also in a weird place. And you really don't understand what's going on. And the book carries on with this like mystery for, I'd say, like 75% of the book until you find out what happened one day when they were at the barbecue at one of their houses. And once you find that out, it's like, I don't know, for me at least, nothing makes sense. It doesn't make sense for them to not be talking to each other. It doesn't make sense for them to be feeling how they're feeling. So for me, it's maybe a good book when you have this like mystery about what's going on or what happened. But once you find out, it's like, what am I reading? So honestly, this was not my favorite read, but maybe, I don't know, you might like it. I think my mom read this one and she really liked it. So I think it maybe depends on the person reading the book. So I am putting it out there and maybe you want to go ahead and grab this one. Now, moving on to book number 3, we are going to be talking about another book by Liane Moriarty. This one is called 9 Perfect Strangers. And as the title suggests, this book is about 9 people who are going to spend some time together at a health retreat. So they go to this kind of big mansion in the countryside and they're supposed to spend a couple of days there in order to relax, to deal with some struggles, to de-stress, to mend a broken link within their family. Any kind of problem that they have, they're supposed to solve it with this retreat. But of course, and as you can imagine, things don't go according to plan and then something happens and the owner of this house, of this retreat, is kind of weird. It looks like something's going on with her up until the very end when you get the big reveal. So speechless. Honestly, I really didn't like this book. I don't know, I was really eager going into reading this one because, as I mentioned, this is a great author and I read some of her books and I love them, but this one was really not my cup of tea. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't know, I really couldn't connect with the characters and I don't think the story is that good, honestly. You can tell I'm like frustrated because when you go and read a book by a person you think is one of your favorite authors and it disappoints, it's like you end up feeling, well, disappointed. So I don't know. I know some people love this book. I know some people were really surprised and happy and excited about the ending and everything that goes down in the last few chapters. And I know this book is going to be turned into a movie starring Nicole Kidman. So I don't know, probably going to be a success. But for me, it was not a book that I really enjoyed or liked. But as usual, I am sharing it because maybe you might like it. Book number 4 is This Is Not a Fashion Story, Taking Chances, Breaking Rules, and Being a Boss in the Big City by Danielle Bernstein. So you might know Danielle. She is the person behind the famous Instagram account We Were What and the blog and the site with the same name. She is a very well-known New York City based fashion blogger. She's been doing this for around 10 years or so. She has had a fashion line with Macy's and some other fashion businesses. So she is really popular and has made a really big name for for herself. And let's say that I didn't hate it, but I really didn't like it that much. I think the book gives you some background about her story, about her time in high school, her time in university, when she started her blog, how she did that, how she got into fashion in the first place, and all about her love story and love interest while she was doing all of these things. But I don't think it has that much depth. I don't think there's really a huge story to tell or that many lessons to learn from what she shares. I read the book Girl Boss in the past, and I think that book has really great business lessons or fashion business lessons, and I was kind of expecting something similar from this book, but I think it's more like a personal diary, a personal story of her own, more like a blog post where she's sharing a lot of her story, a lot of the relationships she had, and not that much about lessons you can really learn from or maybe apply to your own business or to your own blogging journey. So for me, it was 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but maybe it might be your cup of tea, so I am talking about it anyways. So book number 5 is called It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Honestly, I was really excited going into reading this book because I was hearing so many good reviews. I think almost everyone I follow on Instagram was reading this book on the very same week or very same month, and everyone was raving about it. So many great reviews, people saying it was their favorite book, they made them really emotional, they cried a lot, amazing book, amazing story. So I was okay, this is going to be the best book of 2021, and I was like really excited about it. And yeah, I didn't quite like it that much, but let me tell you about it. So Lily grew up in Maine, then she graduated from college, she moved to Boston, and she opened her own business. But she has this kind of heartbreaking love story from her past. She fell in love with a person when she was in school and she was a teenager, and something happened, they didn't see each other anymore, and it kind of left a mark in her life. But when she's in Boston, she meets Kyle, and Kyle is a neurosurgeon. He is very attractive, he's very into her. So although she's really interested in having a relationship and he is really not, they kind of start dating and seeing each other, and everything seems to be going okay until Atlas, the boy from her childhood and from Maine, reappears in her life. So I think the idea of this book and how this book starts and what the story is about and the whole thing between Lily and Atlas is really good and really emotional. But what this book is really about, which I am not going to share right now because I don't want this to be a spoiler, I don't know, I didn't quite connect with that. Maybe it has to do with my personal story as a woman, or the story of my parents or my family or the people I know, but I didn't connect with the big reveal of this book and with Lily's story in this book and what happens to her and everything. So I don't know, I didn't quite like it. I didn't get very teary or emotional, or really didn't think that this book was a great book or an amazing book as so many other people have thought. That does not mean that this book is a bad book. I think probably of all the books that I've mentioned in this video is probably the best one, but maybe it was not the book for me, which can happen sometimes, as I have mentioned before. But I wanted to mention this one because I know a lot of people love them, both on Goodreads, on YouTube and Instagram and real life, and maybe you are one of these people and maybe you read this one and you love it. So yeah, that's it. That's everything. We have gotten to the end of this video, and in particular to these 5 books that I've read and I didn't quite like that much. Let me know down below in the comments if you have read any of these 5 books, and let me know what you thought about them, if you liked them, if you didn't like them. And as usual, do let me know what you're reading right now, what you recommend, and what you think I should be reading as well. That is it for today's video. I will see you on the next one. Bye! In today's video, I am going to be sharing 5 new book recommendations, some of the latest books that I've read and that I think you should be reading as well. Now, with that being said, let's get started with today's first book recommendation. The first video that I wanted to recommend is called Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. This novel is about a person, a thief, that plans to rob a bank and a robbery gone wrong. So this person goes into the bank, something happens, then they end up escaping from the bank and going into to an apartment right across the street where an apartment viewing is being held. So there's a lot of other people inside the apartment. There's a couple that has kind of like grown apart throughout the years, also a new couple, two women that appear to be on its own, a real estate agent, and in a way, this bank robber takes them all hostages. The police arrives, and there's like a whole situation from a very little thing that actually started everything. So what I really like about this book is, on one side, the fact that it's being told from different points of view, and each of the hostages is giving their version of the story. So you really don't know what version is actually the truth and who might be lying or maybe not sharing everything. And at the same time, the action changes between different spaces in the timeline. So you learn a bit about the characters' past, their present, and in a way, their future. I would say that this book is probably not my favorite book ever or my favorite book of 2021, but it's a really good one. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me emotional, and I think that when a book makes you feel all these emotions, it's a good one. I give it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I suggest you go ahead and read it. The second book that I wanted to recommend is called One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So you probably know that I read the first book that Casey McQuiston ever published, which is called Red, White, and Royal Blue. I really like that book. It's all about a love story between two guys, and I don't know how the story is told and the ending, everything is really perfect for me. It's probably one of my favorite books of 2020, but this one is a flop for me. This time, Casey McQuiston, who is an active member of the LGBTQ+ community, dives deep into the relationship of two women. One of them is a young woman that just moved to New York to start a new life, a new career, and moves into a new apartment with new people. And one day she meets a girl in the subway that just blows her mind away. And what she realizes is that she keeps on meeting this girl on the subway every day. It doesn't matter which car she takes, at what time she takes a train, she is always there. So she finally discovers that this other girl is actually stuck in the subway. She's from the 70s and something happened and she cannot leave the subway train. So the story is all about what happened, what went down, why this girl is trapped in the subway, but also a love story, how they connect, how they get to know each other only by riding the subway, and if at some point there might be a way of getting Subway Girl out of the subway. So when I first heard about this new book by Casey McQuiston, I was really happy to read it, and I think I even placed a hold on the book before it even came out. So very excited person here, but I don't know, I didn't quite like the story. I did connect with some of the characters, but I don't know, I feel like the plot is very predictable in a way. You really know what's going to happen. So I don't know, that didn't do it for me. And I really didn't connect with the love story as well and with everything going on with the other characters. So it was a good book, 3 out of 5 stars for me. But if you're planning on reading something by Casey McQuiston, I suggest you first read Red, White, and Royal Blue, because I think that one is really better. Now I'm moving on to book number 3. We are going to be talking about Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this one is another book that's really new, just came out, and you probably know that Taylor Jenkins Reid is, I think, my favorite author right now. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo last year. It was my favorite book of 2020 without a doubt, and I also read Daisy Jones and the Six, and I really like that one as well. So as you can imagine, I was really excited about this new book by this author, and it did not disappoint, but it's certainly not one of my favorite ones. I think both The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six are better books in my opinion, and this one would be like a 3rd place. So Malibu Rising is all about the 4 Riva siblings. They are 2 girls and 2 boys, pretty famous and popular in their own ways, and they're going to throw like an epic summer party that they throw every year. And the story is being told from different points of view and different points in time. So you learn everything about the relationship of their parents, how they met, what happened after that, and you also learn all about the personalities of these 4 siblings, what are their ambitions, their fears, what they feel towards each other, and all that is leading up to like the final point in the story and in the book and the plot, which is the night of the summer party where everything everything convenes, their story, their past, their fears, the people they know, the people they don't know, everything collides in this party and in a way is going to change all of their lives from that point on. So I went into reading this one just because it was Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm not gonna lie about that, and it did not disappoint. I think she has a way of writing, a way of explaining things, a way of describing characters that it's so good, so perfect, and I love that about this book. I also love the fact that this book keeps on referring things from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. So if you have read those two books, it's funny to see how some of the characters are being mentioned in this book and how they relate and how these three books sort of connect. And I like that and love that the author is doing that and playing with her own characters. But the story itself, I think it doesn't have like this huge reveal or this like huge plot like her other two books that I mentioned have. So for me, that's why it was like not that great of a book. But I know some other people have loved it. So I'd say go ahead, read this one. And if you haven't read any other Taylor Jenkins Reid books before, read those as well. The fourth book that I wanted to recommend is called The Cousins by Karen McManus. And I want to start by saying that I really like this book. I think it's the fourth book that I read by Karen McManus. I read One of Us is Lying, One of Us is Next, Two Can Keep a Secret, and I really like those three books. They're all YA and mystery thrillers, the same as this one. But I think this one, The Cousins, is my favorite of the four. And why is that? So first of all, let's start with the plot. The story is about a family, the Story family, that's their last name. And there are four siblings, three boys and a girl. Their father passed away when they were teenagers, and shortly after that, their mother sends them a letter and they're removed from their inheritance and all contact is cut. So a couple of years later, the cousins, which are the children of the Story siblings, are invited by their grandmother to go back to the island that they own. They're, well, a wealthy family, as you can tell, and to work at the resort that their grandmother owns. So it's like a weird situation because the siblings, meaning their parents, are not really sure what their mother is doing by inviting their grandchildren to the island when she hasn't spoken to them for like 20 years. And then at the same time, the cousins, meaning the grandchildren, are also feeling like pretty weird because they know that their parents don't talk to each other. They don't really know their aunts and uncles. They don't know what's going on with their grandmother. So there's a mystery and there's a good story behind all of this that I really enjoyed. But I think that what I enjoyed the most about this book is like seeing Karen McManus, the author, grow. And I know this might sound weird, but when I read One of Us is Lying, which is I think her first book, I thought it was good, but it was kind of obvious or predictable or maybe simple. Same with the second one. Then the other one, Two Can Keep a Secret, I liked that one, was a bit different, but this one, I think it's great. It is YA, which is young adult, which I know a lot of people don't like, but I think YA thrillers or mystery are really good and maybe like my cup of tea, because if it's like a different type of mystery or thriller, which a lot of people like being killed and stuff, I don't enjoy that. But this one is like the right amount of mystery, right amount of people being killed, right amount of like suspense and everything. I enjoy this one a lot. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because it promised and it delivered. So go ahead and read this book. And the fifth and last book that I wanted to recommend in today's video is called The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. So I first heard about this book from the Reese Witherspoon's book club, and this story is about a woman who's apparently having like a normal day in her life up until a girl shows up to her door with a note from her husband just saying protect her. So at the beginning she doesn't really know what's going on until she realizes not only that her husband is not coming back and apparently is on the run for some reason, but also that what her husband means is that she needs to protect her husband's daughter, with whom she doesn't have the best relationship. So this book is all about the mystery of why did this person run away, what is going to happen between this woman and her husband's daughter, and how their relationship might evolve, and what we consider family, and what we might be willing to do and sacrifice for our families. So at the beginning, I really like this book. I think the whole idea, the plot is really good, and it keeps on evolving and being better and better up until like the last few chapters, where I I think it goes like sideways and it really stops making much sense. And I really didn't like that part, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, not only because of that, but also because when the book ends, it left me feeling sad, but not sad in a good way. Maybe you read some other books and they make you emotional, they make you think about your life and the decisions you've made or the relationships you have with your family or your friends, but this one left me feeling miserable, like sad, miserable in the worst possible way. And because of that, I really didn't enjoy it, and I don't know, it was like not my cup of tea. Maybe you might like it, so I am mentioning it in today's video because I know a lot of people love this one, but it was definitely not my favorite. So that is it for today's video and for the 5 new book recommendations that I wanted to share with you all. That is it. I will see you on the next one. Bye! In this video, I am going to be talking about 5 new books that I read, 5 new books that I loved, and that I think you might like as well. The first book that I wanted to recommend is called The Last Letter from Your Lover by Jojo Moyes. So this book takes place in 2 different timelines. First of all, it's the 1960s, and this woman, Jennifer, she wakes up in a hospital bed and she doesn't remember anything about her life, like how she got there, what happened, if she was in an accident. She doesn't even remember her husband, so everything is really foggy, really weird for her. Up until she finds a letter signed just by the letter B saying that she should leave her husband. Mystery. And then on the other hand, we have another timeline that is happening in the year 2003. We have a journalist, and this journalist discovers this exact letter signed by B asking Jennifer to leave her husband, and she is really determined to find out what happened. Did these 2 lovers meet each other? Did this love story have a good ending or not? She becomes really obsessed and starts like investigating everything that went down and whatever happened. So I think this book was really great. Honestly, one of my favorite reads of 2021. I am usually not a person that falls for love stories. I feel like when love stories are really obvious and really predictable, I don't like them, so I tend to steer away from romance in general. But this story, and I think in a way the same that happened with me with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, it has something else. It's not just a love story, but it's something that has maybe a bit of mystery, or it has like a twist in the end, or something that makes you want to keep reading. At least that's my case. Maybe you love love stories, romance novels. That's perfect, go ahead. It's just not my style. But this one I really like, and I highly suggest that you read the book and not watch the movie. I know Netflix did a movie last year, and personally I think it was a really bad adaptation. You know, I'm always one that goes for the books first and then the TV shows, then the movies. But I do have to admit that sometimes the TV shows and the movies are great adaptations. This one is so bad, so bad. I was so mad when I watched it, so angry, because I feel like the story has so many layers, it has depth, it has so many things happening and so many things going on, and it's not a simple love story, as I mentioned before, but it has so much more, and I feel like they simplified it in the movie and it's like a silly love story, and I hated it. So if you are in the hunt for something like romance with something else, I really highly suggest this book. I really liked it, and maybe don't watch the movie. You don't need to do that. The second book that I wanted to recommend is called They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. So this one is a young adult novel, a young adult thriller. So maybe if you're not into young adult that much, maybe this one is not for you. But I am into young adult. I like reading young adult thrillers and mystery, so I had to pick this one up. This is a story about a group of students. The main character is called Jill. Jill goes to a very expensive high school in a very nice neighborhood where everything seems like really perfect, really nice. But she knows life is not really like that because her best friend was killed when they were in their freshman year. And apparently her boyfriend killed her and the case was closed. Now Jill is in her senior year and she's determined to have the best year ever. she's part of a group, very selective, very exclusive, called the Players. Players are like the most popular kids in high school, and everything seems to be going okay up until she starts receiving texts saying that Graham, her best friend's boyfriend that is currently in jail for apparently murdering her, is innocent. Jill is like in between, like, should she ignore this text and keep on going with her life, or should she find out what really happened? Of course, she finds out what really happened, otherwise you wouldn't have a book, but you get the idea. So I really like this book. I think this is Jessica Goodman's first book actually, and I think it's a great start. It's a great story. It has certain levels of mystery, of depth, great characters. You feel like you're in the story, so great build up. Highly recommend it. And since I really like that book, I decided to pick the next book by Jessica Goodman, which is my third recommendation. This one is called They'll Never Catch Us. This story is about two sisters, Stella and Ellie. They both do and compete in cross country for their school. They're very different. One is more single-minded, driven, keeps things to herself, and the other one, Ellie, is more fun. I mean, she does work out, she does cross country, but she also has some fun. Everything seems to be going okay in this weird balance that they have, because they do have a good relationship, but at the same time they compete against each other. They know they are each other's worst enemies in the sport. But a new girl comes into town, comes into their school, and this balance seems to be breaking and that things are not going to be okay moving forward. And then this girl, the new girl, disappears. So mystery again, something going on in this small town. And at first they look at the sisters as the main suspects, because of course they are the ones that have something to lose if this girl that does good at cross country as well as they do starts being more popular and starts doing well in their sport. So I like this one. I didn't like it as much as I like her first book. I feel like this one is like a bit like far-fetched. I know it's a thriller and you sometimes have to make things work and solve the mystery in a way, but personally I didn't love the ending, but it's still a good book. I still recommend it. The fourth book that I have to recommend is called You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen McManus. I have already talked about books by Karen McManus. This one is a new and different story. This is about three friends, Ivy, Matteo, and Kyle. They used to be great friends when they were kids, but then they drifted apart and nowadays they don't really talk to each other anymore. Up until one day when, for some reason, the three of them decide to skip school together, and when skipping school, they end up being somehow like witnesses to a murder of a student of their own school. And things start getting worse and worse, and in a way they all have some connection to this dead kid, and maybe in a way some reason why they would not want him to be alive anymore. So I think this is a good mystery. I think the build-up up until the very end is good. Again, how the author finally solves the murder and the mystery, I didn't quite like it, and I think I found it similar to some other book that I've read, but that happens when you read a lot of mysteries, a lot of thrillers, especially YA. But I liked it nonetheless, and I like the books that Karen McManus writes, so I recommend this one. Go ahead and read it. And the fifth and last book that I have to recommend in today's video is called The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Wow, I need to talk about this book. So this one was one of the last books that I read in 2021, and it was my favorite book of the year. I loved it. I think that's similar to what happened to me with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's a book that I've been hearing recommendations for a really long time, like a lot of people talking about this book, saying it's a good book, but when I read the plot, I thought, this is like too much romance for me, or too much fantasy in this case, and I'm like, I'm not picking it up. But then one day you decide to pick it up, as I did, and I loved it. I went crazy. I cried my eyes out. But hey, let's talk about what's the book about. So this book is about Addie LaRue. She's a young woman in France in the 1700s, and in a very desperate moment, she decides to make a pact with the devil, basically, in which she gets to have an infinite life, but no one will ever remember her face, her name, anything about her. So at first she really struggles with this, with not being remembered by her own family or people she used to know. And while this is hard at the beginning, she then realizes it has some benefits, some things that she can do, and then people won't remember that she took something or that she did something. She keeps on living life 1700, 1800, 1900, the 2000s. So after around 300 years, Addie is living in New York, and one day she goes into a bookstore, and when she's trying to steal a book, which is something that she has realized she can do because no one remembers her, the person working at the bookstore is like, no, you're not taking that with you. Like, I saw you, I remember you. And she's like, what's going on? Like, no one has even remembered my face or anything I do for 300 years. And suddenly this one person remembers me? Mystery. No, but in reality, that is like the beginning of the book and how you try to start to see what's going on. So the book goes backward and forward. So at one time it's the 1700, and then it's the 2000, and then again 1750, and then 2000. And you start to see how Addie grew in a way, even though she's not aging because she's going to live forever. She grows in a way, learns new things, knows new places, new people, and how her way of seeing life, her way of seeing the people around her, the things that are happening in the world, how those keep changing, and how literally everything she once knew changes this time when someone finally remembers her. I usually don't go for books that have something of fantasy because, of course, if you make a pact with the devil to live forever, that has something of like fantasy or, I don't know, not reality. But this book was perfect. I loved it. I didn't think I would love it as much as I did in the end. I certainly did not think I was going to cry as much as I did. There's this like big revelation at one point, and I was like crying like crazy, and I really recommend it. You know, I've said like 100 times you have to read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and now I'm going to say like 100 times you have to read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, because it's a great book, an excellent book, and I don't give any books like 5 stars, but this one totally deserves them. And that is it for today's video. If you liked it, of course, go ahead, give it a like, leave a comment down below, let me know which book you are reading right now, and also you can go ahead and follow me on Instagram at @flopereira, as you can see here. I am always posting new book reviews over there on my feed, but also on my stories I am showing you what I'm reading at the moment, so you can maybe have like a heads up of the book that will be coming here on my YouTube channel. And of course, if you like this video and you want to see more of me, go ahead, hit the subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell to be notified of every time I upload a new video every single week. I will see you on the next one. Bye!